We have 8 different tanks in Marvel Rivals, all with unique playstyles, and today we're going to be breaking down every Vanguard to serve as a one-stop shop to get you started. And well, if there's one thing I know for certain, that's nobody's going to be calling them Vanguards. They're tanks, alright? Let's be honest. But from the shield bros to the dive tanks to the ones that you just want to annoy the hell out of your opponent, there's a lot to choose from. Let's take a look. Let's go to kick things off with Captain America. And well, Steve Rogers, he likes to do the opposite of the good old guy you know from the movies. He's a straight bully, pumping out tons of damage. A good Cap will know when to dive in with his super soldier slam and knock enemies airborne, dealing a burst of damage, and get out when the going gets tough. He serves in Rivals as kind of a brawler and a bruiser, and as the leader of the Avengers, he does like to model that by being around his team when he isn't diving. In team fights, he's great to help support and control the situation by using his shield for pickoffs or quick limbs on supports, because of course, even though he mainly uses melee, you can use his iconic shield as a projectile, and this is even better when you team up with Thor, so much so that when you don't have Thor on your team, you're gonna miss it. Now, his main primary is a melee that if he hits twice, it's going to throw his shield that can ricochet. And of course, he can also use this shield to deflect any oncoming projectile, sending them into a random direction. This shield has about half the health as the massive Doctor Strange shield, working the exact same with the health regenerating slowly over time. Of course, mobility-wise, Cap is fast. He also has a sprint to move quickly, and then he also has Liberty Rush that raises his shield and charges the opponent forward. Now, his ult isn't exactly damaging compared to some of these others today, but it's naturally reflecting his role as the leader, and it's a support ability that boosts himself and his teammates with health and movement boost. Cap is a little bit hard to learn at first, but once you get the hang of him, he's one of the best tanks in the game. Next up is Doctor Strange, the definition of an all-around tank. He has the main role of his tactical playstyle of controlling space and focuses on utilizing his full shield when equipped to withstand 800 damage from opponents. But he also has incredible mobility for a Vanguard with his cloak of levitation, allowing the ease of traversing the map and also giving him an ability to block key enemy ultimates and get into advantageous positions. Now, with all this combined, he's also just the king of choke points. His primary daggers have 6 ammo count and are pretty lethal at a medium to close range. But of course, all this damage does come at a cost via dark magic, his passive. Each time that you successfully hit an opponent, you're going to gain and accrue dark magic that you must release. And if you don't, unfortunately, you're going to end up in the state of anti-heal. But luckily, you can make that negative a huge positive by using his Maelstrom of Madness to release the dark magic for a significant amount of damage to anybody nearby. Now, by far, the coolest piece of his freaking kit is his portal. It's on a huge 180-second cooldown, and you'll need to carefully select when to use it, but it's far more than a simple teleportation from one place to another. You are essentially able to place it anywhere within reason on the map, even off an edge at the start of the game to eliminate an entire enemy team, but you can also place it above their heads. You can drop down on them or even shoot down through the portal or get it behind them and flank. Now, lastly, we have his ultimate, the Eye of Agamotto, an AoE stun where you can shoot opponents' souls that you separate from them over the course of 4 seconds, dealing nearly 70% increased damage to the target. Let's go ahead and move on to I Am Groot, the master of both sustain and poke damage. If you want a character that feels like he can never die and can constantly disrupt the opponent with one of his 2 types of walls, well, you're going to love the big tree. Now, Groot can straight up just be the king of certain objective maps. He has access to the Thorn Lash wall, which grows a smaller, less durable barrier that strikes nearby enemies attacked by Groot and his allies, while his Ironwood wall provides a way to give bonus health when his nearby allies take damage. Now, as you would probably guess, they are best used around choke points and to separate key enemies from the rest of their team when those DPS or even tanks get a bit too courageous. Ultimately, using Groot to dictate where you want your enemy to go is extremely advantageous for most maps. Just be sure to communicate, because badly placed walls can easily piss off your allies. Now, Groot's ultimate is great for rooting down anything in a certain area, giving it the role as a nice setup to other ultimates or to stop those pesky final pushes. It's got itself a pretty good area of effect, so definitely good on those capture maps. Outside all that disruption and sustain, he also has a good amount of damage from afar with both his primary and his spore bomb, which is on a pretty low cooldown, and combined with the walls, you can kind of pigeonhole your opponents into an area and get the most effect from them. Alright, let's talk about the Hulk. One of Marvel's most iconic heroes, serve as a dive juggernaut in Rivals. Now, every match, you're going to start as Bruce Banner with an instant ultimate to utilize to transform him into the big mean green machine. If you're good enough, you'll spend little time as Banner, but he is equipped with a nice gamma ray gun to deal a moderate amount of damage and a decent grenade with knockback. Mainly, you're going to be Bruce Banner when you're just recharging your ultimate and to Hulk out. Now, Hulk comes with a massive 800 health, using his massive fist to punch the hell out of your opponent. He has a massive, incredible leap with no cooldown that is provided with an arrow indicator to help you know exactly where you should land when you're diving into the chaos. Skilled players can also use this to knock flying enemies straight into the ground and then proceed to do this to them. In addition, Hulk also has a bit of a range attack with Gamma Burst, where it's a moderate amount of damage, but nice to have if in a pinch. Now, Hulk's main defense outside of his big ol' fist is Indestructible Guard, in which he can generate Gamma Shields for him and his allies, and when opponents shoot these, he charges up his real ultimate Hulk Smash. Now, guys, Monster Hulk goes crazy. He gets over 1,550 health. He loses his Gamma Shields, but he does gain other abilities. His attacks hit harder. The dude's massive, and on top of that, he also has his clap that can pierce through opponents. Now, from there, he gains access to yet, wait for it, another ultimate World Breaker, where he simply, just to put it lightly, beats the shit out of an opponent. Now, I will say it's pretty easy to be a bad Hulk and just be an ult battery for the enemy team, dying a lot and feeding them plenty of their ult charge. So Hulk will take some patience, but will definitely be rewarded. Time to move on to by far my most played and favorite tank, Magneto. Now, hovering just above the ground, Magneto's mid-range explosive projectile primary fire and deployable shields position him as one of the more offensive and lethal tanks in Rivals. His primary can deal a pretty solid damage if you can hit them all on your target, and you can enhance this even further by protecting either yourself or your allies with metal bulwark. As the opponents hit these shields, you'll gain charges on the rings on Magneto's back to unleash his secondary mag cannon for immense damage and knockback when fully charged. In short, guys, this shield is massive to support teammates like Scarlet Witch's ult to protect her from dying or an ally from incoming damage. The way to go from good to great with Magneto is learning to balance these cooldowns and do enough damage with his primary, combined with good use of his shield, Metallic Curtain. Now, this shield differs from the others in the game as it has infinite health. It can just completely erase ults like Iron Man's, but it only lasts for 3 seconds. Tack that on with a pretty long 15-second cooldown, and you'll need to be careful when choosing to use it. Now, Magneto has a passive to descend slowly, giving him a good high ground advantage on opponents when jumping off ledges, and he shows his full capabilities of this with his ult Meteor. Now, as for Magneto's ultimate, it's capable of a ton of damage. It also sucks in all enemy projectiles, so if the Punisher is going to use his ult, you can counter that with Magneto's, and then you unleash a giant ball like a Spirit Bomb from Goku, and it does really solid damage. But I like to use it personally on the supports in the backline. It can typically one-shot them with ease, or if you see the team fight and people are at low health, you can use that to finish them off. But be careful, if they throw up a shield, it can be blocked somewhat easily. Now, lastly, they did nerf it a little bit, but Magneto has a team-up ability that I plan on covering all the team-ups on a video that's going to be coming here shortly. But when you have Scarlet Witch on your team, it gives Magneto just pretty much a DPS role. Magneto gains access to his sword, which this thing is just ridiculous. It can pierce through shields and just through all the enemies at once. Usually you're going to see this right out the gate when a match starts. It's got a decently long cooldown, but the damage is significant. All right, guys, moving to another off tank a little bit, we have Peni Parker. Now, she's a tank focused on a mix of disruption and support with her traps. She can also set down spider nests that give speed and healing, but also produce drones that explode on enemies. Now, Penny also has access to mines that you'll choose to close off areas, choke points, or the objective, kind of like Groot. And when used in the webs, it's a perfect place to hide them from your opponent, where a good Penny should pick up a couple kills. Other CC that Penny has access to is a web snare to cover your opponent, immobilizing them. And when you combine all of this with massive mobility and a wall crawl and a web that can swing her to a great distance, you've got yourself a pretty interesting and different tank from the other options. If you prefer a hero that you want to be around the objective and have your opponents come to you, then this is what Penny's good at. Like on these maps where you capture the point, I find all these DPS characters just rushing on in, and they're not even focused on the traps, and then they end up dying to them, or at the very least, you get their health down and you can finish them off. She's not exactly that kind of lead tank, but she can do a lot for the team if you perfect her. All right, we've got 2 left. The next up is Thor, the God of Thunder. Now, when you first play this Asgardian, you might feel a bit underwhelmed by his kit, but my God, is this guy cracked. His entire kit is based around his Thor Force, represented by these 3 hammers in the middle of the screen. When he achieves full Thor Force, he can consume them and enter an awakened state, granting Thor bonus 200 health and unlocking a high damage attack for a limited time. Trust me, guys, people are going to fear the hell out of you when you're in this Super Saiyan state. And in addition to this, while awakened, enemies take AoE damage around you, and his basic is amped up to powerful versions of waves. Now, the problem is this does eventually deplete, but you can recharge it a multitude of different ways. The best being Lightning Realm. Now, while you're hitting people in the face with Mjolnir or throwing your hammer, you're going to be able to cast a giant AoE circle, and the more enemies that are in it, the more restore Thor force to him. Now, the one kind of con to Thor is that he doesn't have a shield per se. He gains shields through his abilities, and so he is pretty tanky. But you kind of want to hang around the team or, the payload, the objective, if you can, around corners. You don't want to just sit there taking all the bullets at once. But it is pretty hard for him to die if you are being smart about it. His mobility is pretty lackluster, but he can use Mjolnir to throw himself a small or great distance to knock back enemies and move swiftly around the map. In addition to this, he also has a projectile by throwing his hammer, but you won't be using this all the time outside of maybe finishing off some opponents. Mainly, guys, it's all about getting that Thor force and unleashing your godly power. Now, lastly, his ultimate God of Thunder. Thor launches up into the air and deals damage to enemies below and can smite the ground with a massive hit. It's not the strongest ult by any means, but it's definitely useful in the right circumstances. Now, last and certainly not least, we have Venom. The absolute king of survivability and mobility. Venom is the definition of a badass in Rivals. Now, the symbiote tends to be kind of all about himself. He has immense shields and bonus health, but unfortunately, it's all for him. However, Venom is an absolute pain in the ass to take down, as the lower his health gets, the greater his shield gain is, which in itself serves as the ultimate distraction and, in a way, does tank for the team. Put all that together with his insane mobility and aggressiveness via his Venom swing, and it'll just ooze annoyance onto the opponent's team. Constantly, they're going to be stopping what they're doing and putting their focus onto you. Now, his ultimate, the Feast of the Abyss, you guessed it, gives him even more bonus health and is a great way to clean up characters left with little health or just to do a decent amount of damage to set up your team. Now, Venom in particular isn't insane at dueling other characters or putting out, immense amounts of damage, but he does have other things in his kits like a slow if people can't get away, and has a good way to finish them off with his regular primary. In short, guys, you're looking to swing in, disrupt, maybe get a kill or two, and then swing out, or find that one enemy fleeing away from the team fight begging their supports to heal. That's when you Venom swing in and screw it all up. Alright, so that pretty much just covers it. Hopefully today's video helped you a lot. If it did, it would help me a lot if you subscribe down below. We're trying to grow this baby before the launch of the game, and the kindness and subscriptions so far, they've been huge, and I really appreciate you guys. We got supports coming up, the team up abilities, a lot more videos prior to launch, and then all the premieres of the new heroes coming. If I didn't cover a specific tank and you're watching this later, my bad, but there'll definitely be a video on it soon. Have a good one, guys, and until the next one, bye-bye. Bye-bye now. Bye.